Welcome, and thanks for joining us at the Grown-Ups Table. I'm Dave Patterson.
And I'm Dylan DeQuano. This is the podcast where we talk to you about the shit you never learned, but you probably should have. What's going on, Dave?
Not too much. What's going on with you?
Oh, it's November.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of alarming. Had to turn the old calendar over.
Yeah, we're recording this here today, November 1st, the year 2021. Halloween was yesterday. Yeah, we're here. We made it.
You forgot. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I want to give people a reference point now.
Yeah, because that always works out well for us.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
How was your Halloween?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing too crazy. Had a lot less kids than I expected, which means I've got a lot of leftover candy, which is either a good thing or a very bad thing.
Yeah.
Probably both.
I think it was Friday. I was having like a meeting with my boss, and we were just chatting about Halloween coming up and stuff like that. And she was like, when I first moved onto my street, it was a bunch of young kids everywhere. We used to give out 1,000 pieces of candy on Halloween in a night.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, last year was COVID, so like I know the numbers were less, but it spooked me a little bit. So I went out and bought like 100 more pieces of candy on Friday because I was like, I just need to make sure I have enough. I had already bought 50 pieces and like 40 bags of chips. So then I bought another 100 pieces of candy and did not need them. Yeah, we got way too much left over.
And then the hard thing too is you don't know how much to give to each kid.
Yeah.
So they come to the door and it's like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to get 10 of you or 50. And you start small. And then by the end of the night, you're like shoveling it out.
Yeah. You know what we did this year? We held the bowl out and said, you can take what you want. And most kids would just take one. But there was one kid, he must have been like 4 years old. He was just like, took one and then took another one. And then took another one. Like he didn't take three at once. He just kept going.
He just
back.
like kept. Was he like making eye contact with you the whole time?
Yeah,
because that would make it way better.
Yeah. But I liked that because you really got to see kids' true colors. You got to see if they were. And I was surprised.
Now you know who to look out for in the neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly.
Now you're like, if your house gets egged, you know you've got a short list.
Yeah, but next year, because like on the past couple of years with Halloween, like it's really not been a lot of kids. I think I'm just going to go for be the full-size candy bar house next year.
Honestly, I'm surprised you aren't already.
I think next year is the year. Like,
yeah,
it's not that much more to get a bunch of full-size candy bars than it is to get the giant thing for the amount of kids, and then I'm not going to have a million leftovers.
That does require, like we talked about, struggling with precision and knowing how much to buy. That requires some precision.
Yeah, a little bit.
Because if you buy 200 full-size candy bars and you have 40 kids,
I'm not going to buy 200 full-size candy bars, though. I think that's what I'm saying.
I'm glad that's on tape.
Yeah, I'm going to buy 50.
Because I feel like a year from now, I'm going to need to pull that clip up.
Okay.
And play where you said I'm not going to buy 200 full-size candy bars.
I'm definitely buying 200 full-size candy bars now.
Yeah. Well, we got a pretty special episode today. Cool guest, Jessica Correa from Random Acts of Green will be joining us in a little bit.
Yeah.
To talk about how we can all be a little more sustainable in our everyday lives, something that's pretty important given the current and future state of the world we live in.
Yep. You're always hearing all the doom and gloom about climate change and about just how much pollution there is in the world. And it's pretty jarring. Like how much humans contribute to it. Is all humans.
We suck.
Whales aren't contributing to this. Kangaroos aren't contributing. I know they don't have factories. They don't produce.
I mean, if kangaroos ran a factory, that'd be pretty cool.
It would be, but that's not the world we live in, Dave.
Yeah, but you're right. It is all doom and gloom, and that one of the things that's great about Random Acts of Green and Jessica too is just the positive approach and the focusing on what you can do. So should be a great discussion.
Yeah, it's more about what you can do, not what you shouldn't do, which I think people can appreciate, because no one likes feeling attacked. No one likes that, like the PETA protesters outside with their signs and showing like dead bunnies and stuff like that. And you're like, this isn't helping. People just hate you now. So
yeah. You got to have a positive, engaging, supportive approach, which is what they do. But before we get into that discussion, as we talk about every week, what have you been working on, Dylan?
What have I been working on?
Other than estimating candy needs.
Well, truthfully, nothing special. Oh, wait, yeah. We recorded this before. We were supposed to do this episode earlier, but then due to some complications, we didn't. So I forgot that I had mentioned it before, but it never got aired. But I started running, because we did our episode and you mentioned that you were running. I'm like, I could probably start running. So I did. And
there you go.
I'm not good at it, but I'm getting better at it. So
that's all
just
that matters.
Couple runs a week. Just trying to increase the distance, decrease the time, that kind of thing. But I don't really know what I'm doing. I just run around my neighborhood.
I mean, the beauty of it is it's not overly complicated. I mean, you can get into all kinds of like, cadences and figuring out your target heart zones and how to increase these things. But
when it comes down
people
to
can
it,
run. I mean, assuming you're a fully able person, I shouldn't say that, but like we all ran around as kids. Like it's not that complicated an activity.
Yeah.
So that's one of the beauties of it.
Just run your butt around the block. Yeah, it does. That's what I will say. It does suck. Like, does it ever not suck? Do runners enjoy, like, do professional runners, that's what they make all their, do they like it? They can't.
They must. I mean, you must like being fast. I mean, I think for like a sprinter, like if you're a Usain Bolt, like to say I'm the fastest man on the planet, that's got to be cool.
Yeah.
And it's got to be fun to like actually move that fast.
Like a party
I will
trick.
Say, yeah.
You're like, hey, watch how fast I can run to the living room. You're like, wow, that guy's so fast at running across the house. It's dangerous.
It's impressive. But yeah, I will say it took me like probably a month and a half before I had a run where I thought, hey, this is fun. Like I had to ramp up the distance and stuff for a while before I got to a point where I actually felt like I was enjoying it. And I don't enjoy every run. Those moments come and go.
I will say, because I started a gym a while ago and I was just running on, they have like a manual treadmill there. Yeah. I like running outside a lot more than running on that thing. Because you get to get some fresh air. Yeah. And
a little vitamin D.
Yeah. And when you actually are outside, you can kind of sense a lot more how far you've run than if you're like 15 minutes running outside or 25 minutes or whatever is a lot different than just doing it in one spot. You don't really feel like anything's or you just can't judge it other than I'm tired and sweaty and gross.
No, I'm with you. It's far more motivating, far more enjoyable.
Yeah. And then there's also, if you're like, I'm running this route, you know where you are and where the target is. And
you have a sense of how fast you're going. Like when you're going on a treadmill, you only know you're going fast because your heart's racing.
Yeah.
Like when you're outside, you're passing stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what I've been working on.
That's
also,
awesome.
Emily gave me my early birthday present yesterday.
Oh yeah.
She bought it and she was like, I think that I don't want to wait till your birthday because I think you'll enjoy it sooner. It's not something that, so she just gave it to me and I was like, oh, that's awesome. So she got me a Soda Stream.
Nice.
So
I'm a big fan of mine.
Yeah. So I've been drinking a lot more water because of that, because maybe it's because it's new and exciting for me, but I've just been drinking so much water.
Just get real fired up for those bubbles.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah. How about you? What have you been working on?
Oh man. Well, I mentioned a few podcasts ago having a small fishing boat. Season's over. So I had to figure out how to get that done for the year. So yeah. And I'm pretty stubborn about if I think I can do something, then I don't want to pay people to do that thing.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of attitude that leads to me having a laptop open in the back of a boat while I'm covered in oil trying to figure out how to change an oil filter in the engine. But I got it all done. So I did figure it all out, did save a fair bit of money. Still had to spend a fair bit of money, but so that was a big project. And then I had to get the boat home. The most I'd driven with it was like 10 minutes before. So a 3-hour drive from the cottage was a little intimidating at first. Yeah. But, 2 hours in, you stop freaking out every time you look in your mirror and there's a boat on your bumper. At first, that's a little weird visually if you're not used to towing trailers and other vehicles. So got it back, got it in the driveway. Everything's good to go.
Cool.
Yeah, some lessons learned. With that, I think Jessica's ready to join us. So let's get into the conversation about being more green.
All righty, we are here now live, not live for you, but live for us with the CEO and founder of Random Acts of Green, Jessica Correa. How's it going, Jessica?
It's going. How are you, Dylan?
Pretty good.
Good.
Yeah.
We're super excited to have you here with us.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for thinking of me.
Yeah. So, right out of the gate, why don't we just start off with what is Random Acts of Green? What do you guys do?
Random Acts of Green is a woman-led social enterprise that brings both businesses, organizations, and people together in an online community that empowers collective climate action. And through the Random Acts of Green app, our website, as well as our social media platforms, we prove that seemingly small changes like composting, refusing single-use plastics, or eating less meat really do add up to make a big collective impact for our planet.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot going on in one sentence there, but you really you knew what you were talking about.
I really hope I know what I'm talking about.
Oh, that's great. That's really great. So we mentioned you're CEO and founder. So what led you to start this whole thing up?
Yeah, so ever since I was a little girl, I, constantly saw my parents and sisters leave on their lights. So in my house as a kid, they would leave on their bedroom lights, the bathroom light, the laundry room light, the basement light, the garage light. And it really frustrated me to no avail. And, at a very young age, I started a very informal protest where I would refuse to eat my meals unless everyone around the house turned off all the lights. So I would sit there and pout until everyone got up and turned off all the lights before we ate the meal. And that's where things kind of got started. And slowly but surely over time, I started adding a couple more green acts to convince my family. And so I realized at a young age that I could influence those around me by being stubborn and persuasive and convincing. And so I thought to myself, I wonder if I could influence more people to take action, if I could influence my family and my sisters. And I then took I just did environmental science and studies at Trent University, and I got a degree in the subject. And then I pursued my master's after that. And then I thought to myself, why don't I turn my master's thesis into a social enterprise? And here I am 6 years later, still running that dream. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's been kind of fun. So
that's awesome.
That's how it got started.
Now you mentioned there's an app for Random Acts of Green. Is that just like what goes into that? What?
Yeah.
Can I download the app, or is it more for your partners who you work with, or?
No, you can totally download the app, and please do. The app, it was kind of born actually after Random Acts of Green got started. So, of course, Random Acts of Green isn't just an app; it's a movement. It's a community, and there's a lot more to it than just being a tool. However, the app kind of came about through a provincial project back in 2018. They were looking for a way to engage people living in Ontario to take action for the climate. And we had a really catchy name, Random Acts of Green. And we thought we could take some of the work that we were doing and turn it into a mobile application. And they helped fund the app. And basically what it does is you can log green X, like composting, refusing single-use plastics, eating less meat, recycling, repairing items, buying used clothing, and about 35 to 40 other actions there available on the app, ranging from energy, wastewater, food and transportation, and other. Of course, tree planting's on there too as well. And you can actually earn what's called the green point. So when you log the actions, you earn a green point, and the green points are based on the amount of carbon that have been reduced by each action. So the more green points you earn, the more carbon you've reduced. And each is based on CO2 equivalencies. So it's actually based on the kilograms of carbon that have been reduced. And people can actually see the impact that they're making and earn points. And they can also compete for a spot on the leaderboard. And then what's really cool is they can actually redeem those green points for real world discounts on products and services from some of our business members. So we've got a lot of fun stuff on there. You can redeem them from discounts at Healthy Planet, for example. We've got beeswax wrap. You can get a percentage off of those too as well. And just a whole bunch of other eco products and services that we partnered with different companies to help incentivize and motivate people to take action for the planet and become more educated.
That's really cool. Yeah, I think that if you have something where you can track it and hold yourself accountable, it's easier and more like tangible to actually see what you're doing. And yeah, and if you get an incentive by getting discounts on stuff too, everyone loves that as well. So I think that's a really brilliant idea. That's awesome. I'm going to have to download that app.
Please do.
So you mentioned you have all these businesses you work with. What's that been like? I know it seems to me, at least in the last 5 years, the number of advertisements I see for more eco-minded businesses has really shot up. Are you finding that that's really becoming more commonplace in the market?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, helped us. We generate revenue through advertising and marketing in a lot of ways. We have a membership program as well. And so, I think right now and hopefully it's not just a fad that people are trying to just hop onto. I think, at the end of the day, this needs to come from a place of commitment, dedication, and just honesty. Like, you can always pick the companies that are doing this just because they want to be seen as green and not actually act. Like, it's always very easy to tell bad apples from good apples, at least for me personally, maybe because I've been doing this for so long. But it's always, you can tell the ones that are dedicated, commitment driven, that have been committed to making an impact, even if they're not perfect. It just comes from a place of honesty and, that they're going to try and make an effort. And I think that's really important, with anything, especially in this work. I think judging and making people feel guilty for the things that they aren't doing has really sort of plagued the environmental movement in a lot of ways. So it stops people from taking action when, people are pointing fingers and going, well, you've got a plastic water bottle and you didn't remember your reusable mug. And, it just makes people feel really small and pathetic almost. And so I think that's, it's not helpful. It's not helpful to inspire people to take action. And so one of the things that we've really prided ourselves on is just being positive and inclusive and encouraging people to act and just taking action and just welcoming people. And, I like to say we catch people when they're good. So, giving praise and giving reinforcement when people are doing things right. And we take the same approach with people as we do companies too as well. And so just being their cheerleader when things are going right and helping guide them to make better decisions if they're not doing something perfect. But if we can help them kind of improve, I think comes from a place of learning and understanding rather than judgment. And making people feel guilty. Sorry, that was a rant.
No, that's great. Yeah. And what kind of range of companies and organizations are you working with? Like, in what industries?
Oh, good question. I actually did the analysis on this today. So that's really funny that you asked me. I'm actually going to bring it up. So right now, 40% of the companies we work with are consumer goods. We also have 13% in like environmental services, consumer services. So they might have be selling renewable energy services. They might be selling, organizing services as another example. We work with 3% in the hospitality industry, retail, 2% only in apparel and fashion. But yeah, I think the biggest ones are consumer good, consumer services, and then the 17% have been in food and beverage markets too as well. So it's pretty diverse, but that's what makes Random Acts of Green so fun, is because you can work in various industries and you can help people make an impact regardless of the industry that they're in, and get them to think outside of the box and encourage them to take action in ways they would have never heard of, right? Like you would have never thought, a hotel might be able to lower their impact in some way, right? And we've been able to help guide different industries into taking action in new and innovative and creative ways to get them to think differently.
And So like you just said, you might not think of a hotel necessarily as something that can reduce their impact. And what are how do you come up with the ways that they can do that? Like, obviously you're assessing carbon footprints and stuff like that. But like, what other tangible ways are there to really figure out how to reduce that footprint?
So we focus on people. So we focus on the employees of an organization. So we don't necessarily come in and do like a full environmental assessment on, your building and your energy, right. But we focus on people because we believe that, change comes from people. And so, even in a big corporation, people always point fingers and go, well, the corporations aren't doing anything. Or the government isn't doing anything. And really, when you break it down, governments and corporations they're just groups of people. They're big groups of people. And so really change starts from educating people to take action. And so we work from educating people to become more passionate and feel that they can themselves make a difference. And the idea behind that is that it then spills over into other practices, into their workplace and into their homes as well. So if we start with the person and the teams and the employees, that's really where change starts. And that's when they start to think, okay, what can I reduce and how can I reduce waste in my life? And then how can I reduce waste as an organization? So that's how we make an impact. I know there's lots of other organizations that are beyond the scope of what Random Acts of Green does, but we like to focus on educating and empowering people to take action. And yeah, we've done that in various ways. And, I think with the hotel example, they electrified their vehicle fleet, right? That's just one example. Or they've tried to reduce, the waste in the washrooms from just having too many soaps that they were giving out to the guests and that type of thing. So just having people think a little bit differently. And I think once you know, you can't unknow, environmental practices. And so the more you know, the more helpful it is. And the more your eyes are, open to different things that you could be doing, it's harder to close them, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. And one other thing that you see if you turn on the TV ever is all this talk about the corporations that are involved in creating pollution and driving behind climate change and all of this. And it kind of you mentioned trying not to make individuals feel small, but sometimes when you're watching this stuff and reading this stuff, it's hard not to feel pretty small and insignificant. So for those people who haven't downloaded the Random Acts of Green app yet and seen the carbon that they're saving or reducing, how much do individual actions really matter? Like the bringing reusable bags, all of that. What does that really add up to?
Sure. And this is a great question. And it's a debate that's been, ongoing with tons of podcasts and different people saying, well, what's it matter? Like if I do everything perfectly, if I install a solar panel roof, if I go vegan, if I drive, electric vehicle, if I live off grid, I'm literally making a negligible impact. Like it's still not going to matter. And that's been an argument from a lot of people. And it's true. Like if you really look at one person, one household, and even if you did everything right, like what's your impact in terms of the greater picture? By no means am I saying that not to act. The point is, though, is that it cannot just be you. You have to influence others, which is one of the reasons that, I started Random Acts of Green, because I know I can't possibly do everything in my life, but can I inspire other people to act, to get into politics, to write to their MPs, to write to their, to inspire their kids to get into environmental studies and fight, run for the Green Party next time. Who knows, what can happen if you, just start talking about it, start getting people. And, it starts with a small ask, and then it just continues to snowball. And I think that, just asking someone to start composting or start riding their bike to work once, like just start with a small ask. And then you'll see that things start to change from that one thing that you're doing. And it can't just stop at you, right? Like if you've done everything you can, you have to start,
encouraging
it has to start compounding. Yeah, it's got to keep going out. You've got to keep talking about it. You've got to keep bringing people into the sphere, and you've got to empower them to take action in ways that are important to them, right? And I think that's another thing that people have gotten wrong is like, a lot of programs push biking to work. I look at my parents and they're never going to ride their bike. Like it's just not their thing, right? Like it's just, they're not interested in it. And, and other people might not be able to go completely vegan, right? Like I myself, I have a severe nut allergy, and a lot of people are like, well, why aren't you vegan? And I'm like, well, I literally have a nut allergy, and that's like a whole, part of my diet that I can't eat. So the best I can do is vegetarian, or, have to have a really cautious diet in terms of, I don't know what I'd be able to eat. And that's pretty limited if you can't eat nuts and you're a vegan. So, there's just some things like, stop being so narrow-minded and letting people make impact where they can, and allowing them to use their skills and passions to make changes, and let them make changes on their, on what in their lifestyle, the way that they can, right? You're not going to ask somebody who lives in a rural area to bike to work every day, because it's just not feasible. So, we've got to give people a range of choices, a range of ideas, and get them to feel included. And I think that's really the best way to make an impact. So back to your question. Do individual actions matter? They do matter, but it can't stop at you. And that's really why, I built Random Acts of Green, because I thought, okay, can we sow a community thread? Can we take Random Acts of Green? Can we bring people together under this umbrella and then send them off on their way doing all of the different things that they can do to make an impact? And can we call this an alliance, a collective? Can we get people in a community to get them all acting in ways that they can, so that they don't feel like they're alone? Because at the end of the day, we can't just look at ourselves. We have to spread outwards, and we have to let that multiply, and we have to bring more people in. And I don't think judging or making people feel guilty is really helpful. And so, just trying to get people in the zone and letting people know that this is for everyone, and everyone can take an action.
Cool. And I'm obviously everyone's heard the basic things that you can do in your life: turn the lights off, turn the TV. But what are some other things that in your own life at home that you can do generally that are going to have a bigger impact that maybe people don't jump to right away when they're thinking about it?
Yeah, I think, it's a good question. And I think the most common things I hear people say that they do are recycle, tree plant, and pick up litter, which are great. Don't get me wrong, but those are the three most common things that people do. And I think that then they stop and then they go, yeah, I've done my part. I planted a tree once this year, and that's a wrap, right? Oh, it's Earth Day. Oh, that's a wrap. I picked up litter and filled my bag, and I'm done for the year. And that's, I think that's a common perception that happens quite often, and I think that's very limiting. And definitely reducing the meat that you eat is a huge one. Traveling less is another one, if possible. I could spew off so many other ones, but I think at this point people need to, download the app, look into Random Acts of Green, come on our website and have a look at options that work for you. Because, the ones that are most impactful, being understanding that those things might not work for everyone. So I could list 5 actions, and, if I tell, 85-year-old or 90-year-old woman to come plant a tree with me. I mean, maybe that's not, physically, so it's hard for me to, just like tell people what's right for them. But I would say and encourage people to go beyond those 3 actions. And, we just ran a Hallow Green challenge, for example, and that challenge was all about different things that you could do during the month of October. So as an example, pumpkin waste, right? Like what can we do with our pumpkins? How can we compost them? Can we turn them? Can we eat the pumpkin seeds? Can we actually, instead of just using them for decorations, can we eat them so that they don't become food waste, right? Like all of these different examples, like, people need to be thinking about sustainability more often than just Earth Day. And that's what we've really brought to the forefront, is trying to be that platform that brings it to the front and center at every time of the year, that it's not just a once a month thing, that it's something people and organizations should be thinking about all year round. And we have like a Christmas challenge coming up, all different ways to be sustainable during the Christmas season. So, giving experiences rather than gifts, don't use, glitter wrapping paper. It's one of the worst things because that's just microplastic. So glitter is litter. I could go on and on. I've got tons of ideas. I think we have over 3,500 different green acts, in a database that we kind of spew off. So when people just give me 3 things like tree planting, recycling, and picking up litter, it's cringeworthy, I guess, to me, because I just know there's so much more that they could be doing that aren't that complicated, even just Meatless Mondays. Like if you are not super duper committed to, going vegetarian, just even starting there, it makes an impact too as well. And then getting 3 friends to do it, right? So don't just stop there, like get 3 friends to do it with you, get 4 friends to do it with you. I think is really going to help make an impact as well.
For sure. And like with the Meatless Mondays, or going vegetarian or going vegan if you can, like, do you want to just, because maybe some listeners out there aren't totally familiar with the impact that the meat industry has on the environment. And from what I understand, it's one of like the most significant things because of just how much meat is consumed, how much like methane gas is produced. It's the
amount of water. For sure. So it's the amount of water and then grain that's used to feed the animals, the cattle, that could be used to feed humans. So if all of the resources that were going in to feed the cattle can go into feeding us, it's just such a contrast. And so, lots of organizations like, Oxford, the University of Oxford, has said that cutting meat and dairy products from your diet can reduce an individual's carbon footprint from food by up to 73%, and that eating a vegan diet could be the single biggest way to reduce your environmental impact. And so it is just it's a big deal. And so, vegan diets in particular have far lower carbon, water, and ecological footprints than those of meat or fish eaters. And so, it's a big deal. And it's one of the best ways to do it. There's also like more, radical kind of thinking, if you will, but like have less children is another, kind of not spoken about one that, it's controversial, really.
But it's logical. It makes sense when you say it out loud, right?
Right. And it does, right? So having less children is another like big one, another big green act that a lot of, like I said, it's a little bit controversial, but it is one that has, circulated. The other one is, traveling less, traveling and going on flights, unnecessary flights, very often. We cut them down? Can we do more staycations? Can we do more things around the area in which we live, or travel our own country, and that kind of thing? Those are some big ones that people can do if they do want to make an impact. And then, like I said, having conversations. So talking about it, talking to other people about it, talking to your family about it, talking to your friends about it. Can you influence the people around you to do something? Can you get them to take action? Can you get them to care about this, right? And I think that's one of the big takeaways for sure.
You mentioned flying less and thinking differently about travel. One thing that, again, seems to be all over the internet and I book a lot of flights for my business, and you see it everywhere, these offsets.
Yeah.
Are they legitimately helpful, or are carbon offsets just airlines trying not to look as evil as they are?
This is a hard one for me to answer. I'm no expert on carbon offsetting. That's definitely beyond the scope of my expertise. However, I think doing your research on the organization that you are purchasing the offsets from, I wouldn't say that they're, not worth it. I just think that, there's work to be done in terms of making them just more streamlined, as well as understood by the public. I think that there's a knowledge gap there in terms of, where's my money going to? What's going to be the impact of this? Is it just me opening my wallet to feel good that I'm not, that I went on a plane and that type of thing? So I think there's just a lack of consumer education in the industry. And I think they still have sort of a long way to go in terms of, making it more publicized and making people feel comfortable with that. And then making sure that, the money spent is actually making an impact. It's definitely a great idea. And I think that some companies are doing a really good job with it, and other ones might still have some learning to do. But like any industry, especially with a new industry like that, there's always going to be hurdles to help overcome. So that would be my thoughts on that.
That's great.
Yeah. And back to like what we were talking about a bit before with like the products or the ways that you can change stuff in your home by the actions that you take. Obviously, people still need to go out and like buy, I don't know, garbage bags or there's certain things you need in your life to kind of live the way that society has been created that we're forced to kind of live within now. But are there like certain brands and products out there that you'd recommend to people? Like I think you mentioned getting like wax seal things for containers versus like single-use plastics and stuff like that. Are there any other products?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I would send people to our member directory. We have like a ton of different brands that we work with that offer different solutions. We have like a company that sells stainless steel razors, for example, to switch out plastic razors. We have another company that even sells sustainable floss. So the plastic floss that you use, they sell one that's made from sustainable material that can compost. Just tons of different innovative, sustainable solutions out there. Another one is shampoo bars. So instead of buying the bottles of shampoo, using shampoo bars is another one where people have reduced their waste at home. For women, reducing just like their period waste, for example. We've got tons of different companies that we work with that help women do that. There's lots of options out there. So I would send people to our membership directory because we've got tons of great businesses that support Random Acts of Green that people can shop at and look into. There's lots of different ones that are available, lots of different cool products. So,
Cool.
That's great.
Yeah, one of the things that I have that my wife and I have been using recently, they're like kind of like a cloth, kind of like a sponge, but they're supposed to be like an alternate for paper towel that you can just continue to use over and over, rinse them out and clean them. And they last forever. Like we've had them for like a year and we've had the same 4 of them that we just keep cycling through and washing them. You can put them in your dishwasher.
Nice.
But
sounds like an unpaper towel, I guess. Or
something like that. And that's one thing that I'd recommend to people out there because we use a lot less paper towel with that. Nice. But that's another thing I've been seeing some ads for lately too. Now that I just mentioned dishwashers, saying that you should actually run your dishwasher not full rather than washing your like half sink full of dishes by hand because you actually use less water running the dishwasher than sitting there letting the tap run. Do you have anything to say on that? Is that just another company trying to push their use our dishwashers instead of?
I don't think I can comment on that without doing some hardcore reading about comparing the amount of water and soap and all that that's come, and a lot of these things are it's hard because where do you draw the line, and other people will say, oh well, EVs are not environmentally friendly because they have batteries and the batteries then have to be recycled, and then what, you know what I mean? And so like sometimes it's really hard to like draw lines on, you know, what are we measuring and how are we going to know if we're successful? You know, are we just looking at emissions? Are we just looking at carbon? Are we looking at other metrics as well? And, you know, that's been, it's interesting because our app, for example, a lot of people ask us why picking up litter is not a green act. And that might puzzle you, as it puzzles a lot of people. But picking up litter doesn't actually reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And the funding that we got from the government was just to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So it's really interesting when we pigeonhole things like that, right? Because, you know, picking up litter is a green act because it does help. It has tons of other environmental benefits like protecting wildlife and not letting things run into the, you know, the waterways and that kind of thing. So, you know, yeah, it's hard to just have, it's sometimes not black and white. And that's what I would say about some of these things where, you know, in the example that you gave, just, you know, washing the dishes, sometimes it's not always easy to understand. And I think that's part of the challenge sometimes is, like I said, we need to know what are we measuring and how do we know that we've been successful and how are we going to stop measuring everything? Because, yeah, it gets really tricky. And that would be the job of researchers, I think, you know, out there, academics that are, doing this type of work. So yeah, you have to draw a scope sometimes, and sometimes things are outside of the scope that are challenging for sure. So so the other thing I wanted to mention was the environmental impact of our homes is one of the big it's another huge piece. So not just our diets and not just our waste footprint as well and our plastics and that type of thing, but just the environmental impact of our homes. That's been a big topic of concern is, you know, how do we retrofit the homes that we're currently in to make them more energy efficient? There's lots of ways, you know, to do that. However, some of them are quite expensive. And, you know, like installing a heat pump, for example, is one of the best things that you can do, but that has a large upfront cost. And, you know, or installing solar panels, for example, right? Like these are large upfront costs for homeowners, and especially in a pandemic or just coming out and going into economic recovery can be a large ask. And so having that mixed methods approach of small things and large things that you can do in your homes, like, you know, installing a smart thermostat is another great one, you know, that's not as expensive as the heat pump, and just being mindful about your energy consumption, and then retrofit. So, you know, watching to make sure that you've insulated your attic, or you've ensured that the different, you know, you've sealed up your windows properly and the doors. You know, we're getting into the winter months, so these are ways that you can actually, just ensure that your home is heated and that heat is staying trapped within, and that that you're not wasting energy, and then you can use less of it too. So yeah.
That's great, because I was going to ask about that. 'Cause for many of us, our home is probably the single biggest impact we're going to have.
Especially how much time we've been spending at home over the past like year and a half, right? We're always in it. And I feel like that's the place where you can directly have the biggest impact. So I guess things like, I think I also saw on your website, even, and this is something maybe I'd heard before, but never think about, like unplugging unused appliances because there's phantom power that's being used. Like if you're not using your kettle, unplug it. If you're not using your toaster, unplug it. If you're not using your computer, unplug it. Like you don't need to have all this stuff in, or like have your TV on with nothing on it, just like your Google like background screen that's on it doing nothing because you
hit pause for too long or whatever.
Totally. No, exactly. Those little things, you know, and like they are little things, but like I said, like they do add up, and they can help make an impact. And so, and like I said, then there's on the other side, there's big things that people can do as well. And I think that's, you know, right now though, you know, just being cognizant that, we are in a housing market that is unaffordable to many. And so, targeting homeowners is important. But also being aware that, there's also renters that are living in homes that are owned by landlords. And so almost targeting those landlords too as well, or asking renters to tell their landlords. And in that way, it's becoming more and more expensive to own a home. And so, we might need to shift the conversation a little bit. And ensure that, I think there's grants out there for homeowners to renovate their homes. There's tons of them actually right now. There's a green grant program, I think from the feds, that's out there. Lots of resources online for people to make those switches. But the big stuff, it might be a large upfront cost, which is why I like to weigh things and make sure that everybody feels included in the conversation when it does come to homes. And then just being aware too that it is it's becoming harder to own a home too as well.
Yeah. Lost a lot of money already. Yeah. We talked a little bit about kind of buying eco-friendly products, and something that I've always kind of wondered about is, when is it better to replace what you're using with an eco-friendly product, or are you better to use whatever it is you're using until it dies, or all that kind of balance? And I have these non-compostable whatever. Do I use them till I'm out, or do I switch now? What's kind of some guidance on navigating that?
Oh, definitely use it up, use up everything you have. Because, we've seen people I think well-intentioned, but they've just gone and thrown out everything they had. Even if there was product there, they'd be like, look, I made reusable switches. And we were like, no, you should have used it up first, because there's no point in wasting perfectly good product. That's fine. And then switching things. Yeah, definitely using it up, using it till its full life cycle, because I think the resources embodied in making whatever you've purchased already, wasting it like that is definitely not a green act. So don't throw it out. Use it, even if it's not the greenest option, you throwing it out definitely is not helping. Definitely using it up first.
Good to know.
And back on the topic too of expensive things that will probably make a difference. You're seeing a lot of pushes, especially in the auto industry now, for green vehicles. And then I know that at least we're in the kind of Hamilton area of Ontario. You can use high occupancy vehicle lanes if you're in a green vehicle traveling by yourself too. So there's benefits for getting these things, but obviously they can be cost restrictive at times too. But as we start to develop more technology and electric vehicles and stuff become more easily accessible and available to people, do you think that is going to have a major impact on those kinds of emissions? Obviously, people not driving and wasting all that gas is huge, but isn't there a cost to the electrical component of that too?
For sure. And like I said, it's the same kind of thing as washing your dishes, right? And that question you asked me earlier, what is the greener alternative? But EVs, they're coming up, and obviously use your fuel efficient, car before you buy a new one. And the other thing too is looking at, our current urban setting, right? We are car dependent in many ways. And so, I'd argue too, we are just going into another vehicle, right? At the end of the day, it's still a car, and there's still roads to be kept, and, it's still encouraging people to drive around, and those vehicles do need to be charged, and on what kind of energy are you using, and then what are you gonna do with the battery, and it is a car. I'm not saying that people can survive without vehicles, especially depending on where you live and your job and that kind of thing. People do need cars, but there are, there's other forms of transportation out there, right? There are bikes, there are buses, there are carpool methods, there's car sharing, there's other ways, right? So being just solely focus on the car, I think, is sometimes our problem in a lot of ways. And so, just, maybe you try riding your bike once a week in the summer and spring and use that as a commitment and see what happens, right? Like, are you happier because you're moving more during the week? Is it fun to be on a bike, right? And just thinking about that. But yeah, to answer your question about it becoming more affordable, yeah, I think it will become more affordable. I think people will make that switch. I think people are going to overcome those hesitancies right now of like, oh, what's going to happen if it runs out of batteries? Well, the same thing that's going to happen if you run out of gas. Yeah. I think people are going to overcome some of those things, eventually. And people are going to become more comfortable. And so maybe the next car that people buy, people start looking at EVs a little bit differently. And if there still is a lot of hesitancy about it, I think that, hybrids are out there too as well. So you can, use for shorter distances in your city where you are to do things like grocery shopping and whatnot, use the EV. And then if you need to travel longer distances, you can use the gas if needed, right? And but anyway, I think we need to think about other methods of transportation too as well, because it doesn't just need to be the car. I think, we got to think outside of the car sometimes too.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. One big one, and you I've thought of this because you mentioned out of the gate that some people just, aren't going to ride a bike to work or can't, depending on their situation.
Sure.
And, you talked a lot about the importance of the individual act isn't just in the act itself, but in sharing that act and inspiring others to also act.
Sure.
So sometimes, we just had Thanksgiving a few weeks ago. Christmas is coming up in couple months. I'm sure some people are going to have some relatives around the table who maybe have some bolder opinions on certain things. What are some ways to have these conversations about other people, whether it's friends, family, coworkers, about differences that they can make and how to live a more green life?
It's a great question. And I think there's always going to be differences of opinion. But I would say, like, one of the things I like to tell people is that I think the vast majority of people are going to be open to listening. The vast majority. There's always going to be that one or two that are just like, whoa, they're just not going to listen to you regardless. Right. And like, it's not because you're wrong. It's just because they're battling you because they think it's fun. Right. So like, there's always going to be that, and I think, to me, if that is draining you and making you feel, maybe don't focus there right now, maybe focus on the vast majority of people that are going to listen. The ones, like I said, that are kind of, not listening at all just because they're not paying attention and they won't see both sides of the argument. I mean, you're kind of just like banging your head against a wall because, it's not helpful if they're not open. And so I would start with the people that are open to at least hearing both sides or listening, and having, an informative discussion with you, rather than the ones that are just straight up like, this isn't true, and I'm not even going to listen to anything. So I think that you might be wasting your energy a little bit. I mean, not to say don't try, but I think my best advice would be starting to like get some practice with it. Start with the people that are at least open to listening, and that kind of thing. And then moving on to the harder ones after you get a little bit more confident and comfortable, talking about it. So that would be my best advice. If that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Very practical advice.
Yeah. So clearly with this being your career and what you studied in school and what you've been doing since you were a little kid, telling your parents to turn off the lights before you eat your dinner and that kind of stuff. Obviously, this is the kind of thing that's on your mind. I'm going to guess, like, from the moment you wake up, you're thinking about these kinds of things. And I guess
not to. I try to like take a break.
but I bet for you in a lot of ways, because you spent so much time and energy doing it, these things just become second nature and natural to you in your everyday life. And are there any like other quick things that you can like recommend to someone that they can probably make this tiny change in their life every day and not really have it impact them and it be just part of their life now?
Sure. I think, and I think that's almost a misconception. I think people have this like they think that I've got, a Tesla and solar panels on my roof, and like I live in the woods and I'm off grid, and like they're like, oh, Jessica, she must be perfect, and I really hope that's not what people think, because that is not true. There is still plastic in my house. There are still things that I struggle, and I'm by far not perfect by way, shape, or form at all in terms of my lifestyle. I mean, yeah. I've definitely made some serious waves in what I do and how I do it. And I'm always trying to push and do more. But I think that's, I think that's one of the, I guess, fallacies, if you will. Like, it's all or nothing, right?
I think that's a good thing to admit and to talk about too, is that that's not what we're striving for here. It's not to be perfect. It's just to try to do better.
And I think that's key. And so I've been very transparent about that. It's like, it's not about it's not all or nothing, right? You don't need to do everything in order to do something. And so, don't let, that stop you, right? Because there are things that you're just never going to be able to do. I mean, I can't eat vegan cheese made from cashews. I just can't do it. I will literally break out and go into anaphylactic shock, right? So I'm not going to choose that as something that is viable for me to do. And I think that that's a really important part of this, is like, you need to you can't compare yourself. I like to think of it as losing weight, right? I mean, like, if you are 100 pounds overweight and, the guy down the street's 20 pounds, like, you're starting at different points, right? And so you have to think about, and like, you can't compare yourself to an Olympic athlete and say, okay, well, I'm going to become an Olympic athlete, right? Like, you just need to start where you are and start making changes, and just continue to have it on your mind. And can you do one more thing, right? And, this year I gave out clementines, like dressed as pumpkins, like, I like put a permanent, and I gave those out to the kids. Right. And, just another thing that you like, super easy, low hanging fruit, like, don't give out, lots of candy with wrappers, right? That could turn into litter later. Like, just such a simplistic thing that, anyone can do, really. The Meatless Mondays might be a little bit more challenging for some, but it's another, low hanging fruit to get people started. You don't need to go all the way, swap your diet entirely. You can do baby steps, and you can get started with something. And so, I think, I've made a lot of changes personally, and, I'm pretty minimalistic. My clothes are used, and, I really have, just cut down on I've never been much of a stuff person anyway, but I live very minimalistically. I don't have a car. My partner has a car, so we are a one-car family. My dog's barking. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Anyway, she's I think taking a look at what you own and that kind of thing, and having less of it, and connecting with nature is something I'm really big into as well. Not just doing things like composting, but spending time in nature to remind herself, okay, what is it that I'm doing this for, right? Why am I doing this in the first place, right? Always connecting back to that, I think, is super important. So the more that we connect with nature, the more that we're in it. I'm a big camper, and that kind of thing. Just spending time in nature reminds you of why it's important to protect it, and why you're even making those small changes in the first place. So anyway, that's that.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. And yeah, you need that reminder of like, what am I fighting for? And you get to spend some time especially in Canada, where we're lucky enough to have so much beautiful nature and stuff all around us. Yeah, get out and enjoy it. Don't just sit on your couch all day just watching other people enjoy it on YouTube or something.
Yeah.
I have one more question, and your dog barking is actually what brought it up for me. But are there like green things that you can do involving your pets more, in terms of pet food brands that you'd recommend out there, or anything like that? Or can those all be found on the Random Act of Green?
They can. We actually have, this question has come up quite frequently, because I think people are starting to realize that pets have a carbon paw print, if you will. It's something to think about, because dog food is meat dominant. And so in a lot of ways, it has caused some, controversy, right? So in terms of, we're buying, if we're vegan, vegetarian, and then we're feeding our dogs just strict food that's made from meat. There's definitely some question marks. And another really interesting thing is that during the pandemic, pet ownership has just like skyrocketed. Yeah. So more people have pets. And so it's becoming huge conversation right now is how to green the pet industry. And I think it's an evolving and emerging topic. But I would say that we do have some business members that are selling cricket-made pet treats. So basically they're made from insects. It's insect protein. And so it's just something else. So I've given them to my dog and she just gobbles them up, but she eats anything. There's other dogs that might be.
It's hard to tell with dogs sometimes how good things are.
I know, right? She loves everything. So I mean, she's a lab. Like she'll eat anything. But yeah, so I think, and then the other thing too is like, the dog bags when you're going for a walk, like, which kind are you using? We have another company that has, the ones that compost and that kind of thing. And then another one I think is making like pet toys made from like, I think upcycled rope or something. So we've got some good companies that we've partnered with that have helped educate even us in the field. It's not something I'd thought about before. So again, I'm always learning too, because there's so many industries that have so much work to do and that are always coming up with new ideas and new ways to, green their industry. So it's been, it's exciting work. That's for sure.
And you mentioning those dog compost bags for picking up your, the dog poop and stuff like that. One thing I will say, if you're buying these kinds of products and stuff, use them properly too. Like how many times do you see people get these compostable dog bags and then throw them in the garbage?
Truth.
Like, they're not being composted if they're being thrown in the garbage, as far as I know, right?
Yeah.
So throw them in the compost instead. Like I think that those are also just things that people need. You need to think about the full cycle of that thing, not just the fact that you bought it.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Totally.
So we've covered a wide range of topics here, and we mentioned obviously the Random Acts of Green app, and you mentioned the website where people can see your business partners. Where else can people go to learn more about you, what you're doing, and what your organization is trying to accomplish?
Definitely our website's the best place, but we do have very active social media channels as well. We have a Facebook and an Instagram channel right now that we constantly are sharing ideas and brands too as well that we work with. So Instagram and Facebook are good places, our app, and then our website. And we also have a newsletter that is quite popular too as well. So people are constantly getting tips, ideas, and tricks and that from it. And then we would encourage people to become members with Random Acts of Green. So that's one of our, so we have a business program, but we also have an individual program where people can actually sign up to be a member with Random Acts of Green and to contribute to our work, as well as get curated impact ideas of things that they can do that are just a little bit more formal, and we provide and we build a relationship with each of our members too as well, and so we get to know them, and then we're kind of an extension of your green team to help you get the right answers. So that's another way to get involved with us.
Fantastic. Awesome. Do you have anything else, Dylan?
Well, we always do have this one final question we ask our guests, the same for every guest. So what have you been watching or listening to, or any recommendations you can give out there, if it's on Netflix or just a good book you've read or podcast or anything like that?
All right, let me think about that. I mean, right now I'm reading a book on the psychology of stress out of all things. So it's a really easy read, and it's really interesting. I got it from the library.
Like an easy read.
It's really easy, I promise. It's like so colorful, and it's just like, it's just such an, the book is just like, it's almost like a picture book, and you just like flip through it. It gives you really interesting facts on just like the difference of stress between men and women, just other coping tactics, how to deal with anxiety, that kind of thing. I really liked the book. I recommended it to a couple people, and if you're dealing with anxiety or stress, I would highly most people are during the pandemic.
Do you know what it's called offhand?
It's called The Psychology of Stress, I believe. Let me look it up. Psychology of Stress. It's called Stress. The Psychology of Stress, Managing Pressure. Yeah, it's a nice little book. You can get it. It's an ebook, and great tips and ideas. And like I said, very easy read for people to kind of dig into on a weeknight or on a weekend morning. Just flip through a couple pages. It's not heavy reading, but it's very good. So yeah, that's what I would recommend.
That's awesome.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
All right.
Well, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for coming on, and it's been great chatting with you, and we'll definitely be signing up to join the mailing list and get the apps and stuff and get all those green tips sent to our inboxes. Alrighty, well, thank you again, Jessica, for all your tips, for joining us today. Tips on being more green, insights on how we can change our outlook, putting things into practice, and just starting this company in the first place and trying to get people motivated and into the mindset of being more green in their lives. And also, like she said, not like making people feel guilty about it. I really liked that that aspect of it, because like I said at the beginning, and she said it during the podcast, like, you just don't want to feel guilty about doing stuff. It turns people off, gets them off track a little bit. So thank you again. You can find them at Random Acts of Green on Instagram, or their website is www.raog.ca. And like she said, they have an app on the App Store, Random Acts of Green. Download that and track how you're doing.
Absolutely. You can probably not find us on the leaderboard, but we'll be striving.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get there.
Where you can find us is on Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and most other places you find your podcasts.
We've also got a website where you can find all of our podcasts and links to people we've had in the past, including Random Acts of Green. Our website's thegrownupstable.ca, or you can throw us an email if you have any insights or ideas, topic ideas, anything you want to say, thegrownupstablepod@gmail.com.
Be sure to give us a follow, like, and give us a rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes, and we'll see you again
at the Grown Ups Table.